running through all the hands that Brian could have possibly 5-bit that beat him right now. Possibly ace, queen of spades. I don't think he puts Brian on pocket eights, though.
How could you? The
You
cold
block
five.
pocket kings. There it is. Wow.
Full value.
Why is it important to warm up before poker sessions?
Poker is very different from most things you can do in life for money. It's uniquely distinct because in the moment, the way you react, in the moment, the way you process information, or in the moment, the way you're connected or present is the difference between losing and winning. It's not the cards, it's not luck, although a lot of players think there's a lot more variance luck involved. So when we show up to the session willy-nilly, or just show up like, hey, I'm just going to play like as if it's a game of basketball, we're setting ourselves up to play at a suboptimal level, or even worse, depending on the state we're in, we could be in for a disaster. By setting an intention and creating a routine that allows us to come in present and grounded, we're actually creating the floor for our game where we don't go beneath it, no matter how we're feeling or what's happening at the table. So when we show up unacknowledging what we're feeling, what we're experiencing in terms of thoughts, we're going to play and project and mirror the table exactly how we feel. So we will play only based on how our mind is processing information that day.
It's a pretty common thing that happens to a lot of people when they play higher stakes, right? And this is what showed up for me that day, was lots of fearful thoughts of, I'm not good enough to play in this game. I don't have enough money to play in this game. These players are better than me. Like anxious thoughts of how's it going to work out? What am I going to do? All that sort of stuff. So when I showed up, I did a routine, but I was I was avoiding the thoughts that were those anxious thoughts. Instead of connecting with them, I was just like, oh, I'm good. Everything's going to work out. It's fine. And I just kind of ignoring all that.
That's the interesting part. It's counterintuitive to our mind to say, hey, when I'm hearing those fearful thoughts that I'm not good enough, I don't have enough money, I can't afford to play in this game, these players are better than me, to actually acknowledge it and step into it, letting the thoughts out and really being present and aware of them. Our mind says, no, these are bad, avoid it. Ignore it, avoid it, because if you do that, maybe it'll go away, or at least it won't be as strong. And that's the part that doesn't work, because when we avoid it, it literally builds in our unconscious, like a volcano. It just builds, and we keep trying to ignore it. It's in the background. So what ends up happening is, as it builds in the background, it's actually running our programming. It ends up being in charge of our decisions and the way we perceive the players, the action, and our own hand and what's happening. So by stepping in, by saying, no, you know what, I am scared. I feel this fear, and it's okay. What is underneath the fear? Oh, I might go broke. Or maybe I'm just not good enough for this game. Then it actually eases it, because that thought comes out, and then it stops being this giant balloon in our own mind. We're just ready to pop.
Yeah, so the conscious and the unconscious are not at war with one another. When we resist or avoid the thoughts in the unconscious, the stuff that we don't want to acknowledge, it stays there. It's there whether we like it or not. And if we don't acknowledge it, then the conscious is going in one direction, saying, hey, come on, we're good enough to be in this game. Everything's going to work out. And the unconscious is going, I don't know, bro. Like, I don't think so.
And unconscious is much stronger than unconscious.
Yeah, well, it works a lot faster. And Okin and I have history. We played together in Bobby's room for a year. And he walked in and he had already been talking about that the previous day he had like a pretty significant losing session, like a really big losing session. And then the thing that I said when he walked in, because you don't know him, I said, "Oh, that's Okin. He's great to play with. He's a really aggressive player."
I don't even think you said he's really great to play with. I just think you said, oh, he's really aggressive. It was more like from a space of, oh boy, he's here.
Yeah, so already the thoughts are saying, setting me up for this is an aggressive player, or this is how I feel about this player, instead of being like, okay, there's some dude that just walked in and I'm present and I'm going to let the game flow and see what happens and play present. I'm already setting myself up for this dynamic that exists outside the present moment that my fearful thoughts are creating.
Yeah. So it's the fear actually interpreting him. It's not you. The fear is saying, hey, I'm not good enough for this game. I might not be worthy even playing here or have enough money. And I'm against this guy who obviously is way more comfortable than me, has more money than me. And so he's more capable and he's better than me.
Yeah, and you said, so what was your perception? Because you don't know him. What was your perception of him?
Well, he looked distraught. He was pretty open about it, that he had the biggest losing session of his life the night before, and he looked just completely shattered by it. It looked like he was an ice cold tilt. He was nervous, he was scared, and he was in the space of, I don't know if I can make that money back, and whatever I'm going to do today, it's going to be very much straight ahead, just trying to make hands, have big hands, and play safe, because I can't afford to lose big. So what I saw for him was ice cold tilt, and somebody who was a really tiny comfort zone.
Someone's going to play straight ahead, try to hit hands, and otherwise not do much outside of that.
Yes.
And so my perception of him is, this is an aggressive player that I should be scared of, and I don't know what to do versus him. And your perception of him is, okay, this guy's going to play very straight ahead. He maybe takes some spots pre-flop, but when the money's going in, he's going to want to have it.
Yeah. And it's the fierce perception for you. It wasn't your perception, because you, when you see him for who he is, you're just like, oh yeah, it's him. I can play him very easy. He's straight ahead. But the fierce perception is seeing everybody's better or bigger or stronger than what we are. So it perceives him as aggressive, which means then the interpretation becomes, if he's aggressive, he's capable, which means he's capable of barreling, he's capable of putting big money in without a hand. So against someone like him, the safe play, quote unquote, is to make a hand or get a hand and basically hold on for dear life, when that's not at all the profile of the player we're up against. So it shows we're already coming in untilted field, which means we see everything skewered through the prism of fear, which has nothing to do with reality or being present with what is.
And then how's that going to make us show up?
We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that aren't actually happening. We're going to interpret information in a way that doesn't at all apply to reality, what's happening.
And poker-wise, that looks like
punting off our stack.
We're getting attached. So getting attached when we have a hand, because that's in the comfort zone. This is something I can explain. This is something I'm comfortable with. I have a hand. I'm going to fight for this, and I'm not going anywhere. And then it's going to cause me to play on cold tilt when it's time to barrel. I don't trust myself to barrel off, because what if I'm wrong? What if I'm not seeing what I'm seeing? What if it doesn't work out? So the fearful thoughts will cause me to play on cold tilt, and then when I get a hand, get attached to it.
Yes. So playing backwards. Instead of exploiting the game for what it is, we're actually being exploited or being super exploitable because of our fear.
Yeah. So the hand went, we're playing the VPIP game, so there was no limping. So it went, Kier opened under the gun for 200. Vlast made it 700. I have ace king on the button, so I make it 2,000. And then Okin makes it 6,000 in the small blind. Well, thought process now is basically we flat there, and knowing he's going to play straight ahead post flop, he's going to be capable of one street of aggression max or two streets with equity, but he's going to play very straight ahead post flop. He's going to be most capable pre-flop, especially with the dynamic of the game, where it's a wide open under the gun from Kier. Vlast is very capable 3-better. The game is very active 3-betting. And then I'm going to be most capable on the button. So to him, none of the action looks strong at all. And he's very capable pre-flop. So this is a spot where he can 5-bet wide comfortably. But it's only 5-betting wide to, like we said, try to smash a hand. It's not going to be 5-betting wide to be barreling off and risking chips to try to blow me off of a hand.
Yeah, his intention there is to win pre-flop if he can. Even though the raise seems pretty small, because he made it 2K and he made it 3X in the big blind, it's still 4,000 difference. And with the stacks being what they are, that's a pretty hefty raise in terms of the value itself.
Yeah, if I have something like 7-8 suited or
Ace-10.
Or even if I have maybe pocket fives, it's like...
You folding ace-10 there, ace-jack, maybe even ace-queen, like, because with the stacks being what they are, it's almost like, am I calling here to just, hope to hit a hand or hope he gives up? So we are folding in a vacuum there, a pretty large portion of our range.
Yeah, so our choices there are to either flat or click him back. Clicking back is a great option because we do that with aces, kings, queens, value hands. And even we could do it with other hands. If we think that he's weak or light there, we can click back and be barreling.
Yeah, in a vacuum, let's say we're assuming we don't know if he's strong or not. We just know that he's 5-betting. Mm-hmm. So we know he's capable of doing it light in that spot, but we also know that he could have his entire range. Let's say that's the assumption. Yeah. So if the assumption that he could have everything from aces to eights, jack 10, queen jack kind of hands, then flatting there is probably the best option if we're in a vacuum. We don't know anything else, because if we click him back and then he goes all in, then puts us in a really rough spot. Yeah. So we're playing an assumption that we don't know what he has. And next segment, we're going to break down why we did know, or why we should know. We should have known. So then flatting there, if we don't know, but we know he's capable and he has a wider range than normal, then flatting there is the right thing against a player of his profile who's going to play very straight ahead post flop and not going to barrel off just because he cold 5-bet us.
I mean, he's turning his hand into a bluff pre-flop. So once he's turned his hand emotionally, mentally, once he's turned his hand into a bluff, he's not just going with it post-flop. He's saying, I'm trying to win this pot easy, and if I don't win it easy, if Dave doesn't give it to me, then I have to give up.
Absolutely. He'll give us credit, because then he'll realize, oh, I thought he was full of shit in the button, but he's not, because he's not flatting here unless he has a big hand. Yeah. And I know Dave is capable of flatting there with everything. So, yeah, once we float him, even on the board, like let's say deuce 3-7, and he c-bets and we flat, and the turn is like 10 or jack, for example, he's going to give up hands like 8s, 9s, 10s. So he's going to give up pocket pairs, because he's going to say, if I call turn with this stack, I'm going to be expected to call river. And I'm not willing to do that.
If he had, say, 8s on 7, deuce 3, 10 board, and I flat him on the flop, and he checks turn, and I bet, and then I jam river, I don't think he's calling. Yeah,
I'm not even sure he's calling turn. We would have to basically split our stack to do both. I would bet the turn to give us a chance to jam. And stack to pot ratio doesn't really matter in this game, because it's all about ultimately the size of the bets. Meaning if they have to call off 16,000, it doesn't matter that they're getting like 4-1. They want to call off 16,000 when he thinks he's no good pretty much every time.
And going back to his emotional state, he's not there to be calling off versus me.
Yep.
He's there to try to win easy money and try to smash a hand.
Yeah, so on that board, when the board comes out, king 10-8, and he c-bets small, we go with our plan, obviously, just flat. There's nothing else to do there. It's flat and see what he does in turn. The turn brings in
another 10. So king 10-10-8. So
with 2 spades.
Yeah, 2 spades on the flop. So no spade on the turn. Yeah, so the interesting part about this hand, pre-flop we did, flop is pretty standard. There's nothing else to do. So the turn, the question is, what does he do with what range of hands here? Right? So if he has air, what does he do? If he has equity, queen, jack of spades, ace, queen of spades, king, queen, what does he do with those hands? And if he has the top of his range, what does he do? So He bets 4,500 on the flop, and then he bets 6,500 on the turn, leaving me about 16,000 behind if I call the turn. So the question is,
So what's the pot size on the turn
about
before he bets turn?
before he bets turn. After he bets, about 22,000. 9,000 on the flop and 12,000, so about 22,000 before he bets turn.
And he bets about
6,500.
So about 20%, 30% of the pot.
Yeah.
So it's a small bet.
Yeah. So what's his intention with that bet?
Well, with our stack being what it is, he should expect us, if we call turn, that we're gonna automatically call river. It just doesn't make sense for us to call turn and give up river. His bet there is not gonna get us to fold.
It's not intending to get us to fold.
Yeah, but exactly. His bet there's not gonna get us to fold hands if you want us to fold hands. So if he has hands, so we know with air he gives up, whatever it is, or hands that just don't work well with that board.
Because my hand gets stronger on the turn.
Yes, and because at this point he's just going to give up. The board texture doesn't help him. Hands like Queen Jack of Spades, Ace Queen of Spades, hands that have a lot of equity in terms of the draw, or at least possible equity. I see him either checking and hoping to see a free card, hoping you check back, or if he gets really into the attachment fight mode for the pot, betting huge or just jamming the turn, or committing himself in a way that if we do jam there, that he's snap calling because he's pricing himself in. That bet on the turn screams, last thing I want you to do is fold. I want you to stay in this pot. I need you to stay in this pot. So this way I can set up a river jam. The strength of his bet is very obvious. It screams it's the very top of his range. I'm not even sure if he bets this way with aces. Maybe. But it definitely screams hands like eights, king 10 suited. I guess quad 10s too. It seems like a narrow range, but ultimately it doesn't matter because the narrowness of his range is irrelevant. What's relevant is how is he playing it.
Yeah, and so basically, what is the range of hands that we beat that make that turn bet?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, King Queen doesn't do it. King Jack doesn't do it.
Queen Jack suited, Queen Jack Spades doesn't do it. Ace Queen of Spades doesn't do it.
Yeah, we said with aces or even Ace King, it's assumption, but he's probably taking a street off, or he could comfortably bet.
I think Ace King takes street off because his mind is going to create a story of I could be beat here, and ultimately I don't want to value on myself. I think there's a very high probability that he can check the turn because he can't beat anything.
And so the state of mind I was in was just, I hit this hand. I'm not doing anything else in this game. Right? Like, what's my strategy in this game? I'm not barreling people off. The game is aggressive. I don't trust myself. I'm in a fear state. So once I hit top pair and the top pair, top kicker in a 5-bet pot, when we know his 5-bet range there's wide, where am I going?
Yeah. The attachment we had to the pot, to the hand, happened way before the flop. We already attached, like, hey, if I hit a hand, I have a big hand pre-flop. If I hit it, I'm not going anywhere.
Waiting for it.
Yeah, and it exactly comes from the space of I can't trust myself to do anything else. I can't trust myself to play poker. If I can't trust myself to barrel off or put my stack in with air or in whatever situation where I don't have a big hand because I see that he can't call off or that he won't call off, then the only thing I could do is wait for a hand, and when I do get a hand, I have to hold on to it for dear life.
Yeah, and it's important to note that this is a very common dynamic because even the commentators say, oh, okay, the money's going in. There's nothing that Dave can do about it here. It's why would Brian have a set on this board with in his 5-bet range, and then Dave has top pair, top kicker. So it's just there's nothing he can do about it. So that's like the perception of it. But once we clear out the fear of needing to hit a hand and needing to be attached to the hand and having to go with it just based on, well, there's nothing you can do about it, then we get back to what is our intention for the game. Well, the intention for the game is to fight the players when they're not fighting for the hand. When they're not attached to the hand, that's when we step on the gas. And when they're fighting it, especially when we know the player's straightforward and he's not there to fight or push people off pots, based on the state of mind that he came in with, and based on what we know of him as a player, then it becomes an easy fold. Yeah, and that was the big thing for me, was I didn't trust myself to make the fold in the moment. We didn't even talk about the river, but on the river, once I didn't step through my resistance on the turn to let go, on the river I was like, I'm just going with it. I'm not going anywhere now. I had already given up mentally and emotionally on the turn because I had the opportunity to get away from it. And I knew instinctively that I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't beat anything here with this sizing. And I felt it here, but up here was like, dude, what are you going to do? You're going to fold here? He's going to show you something, and these guys are better than you, and all those thoughts up there and there, and then there's nothing I can do. So then once I called the turn, I was like, that's it, I'm calling the river.
Chat rooting for a river king. You guys want blood.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is you were basically at war in your own mind. So you weren't even playing him or the hand. You were just bouncing between the thoughts of, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. So if I have this opportunity, when am I going to have the next opportunity like this? So I got to do this because it's easy or it's simple.
I'm not even watching it in normal speed. It's going to be like 0.75.
Oh my god. Slow.
Holding his pocket nines too.
The
Okin bluff.
chip it's going to be this time.
Only time he was bluffed all night.
Does make sense. He has a bluff catcher.
So what we're seeing from him is that tug of war in his mind. You see it in his action where he tries to convey confidence, comfort, strength, but what his body's doing, because he's getting sent a message from his unconscious, is being unsettled, jittery. He literally cannot settle down, and it's constant side-to-side movement and a bunch of peacocking. What we call peacocking is somebody who does a lot of unnecessary extra movement to almost distract the players or create a sense of, look at me, I'm strong, look at me, I'm like, be afraid of me, please. So we see that movement is non-stop, it's jittery, it's all over the place. While the message he's trying to convey consciously is like, please believe me I'm strong, believe me that I'm confident. So that duality is what we see when the unconscious, which is the driving part, saying, I don't like this, and the conscious saying, but I want to win this hand. So the flop we see is what we said we would have seen pre-flop if he had a monster hand. As soon as the flop hits, once his eyes connect to the board and the message is received internally that, oh boy, I flopped a monster, everything settles down. So the energy itself, the breathing goes up. You see his chest heaving, you see it going to his neck and to his face. But the movement, the distracting part, the self-defense part that we saw pre-flop, almost completely disappears.
The head swinging side to side, the shoulders moving, everything.
Yeah, because at this point, what matters now is that both his unconscious and conscious connected, and said the board is exactly what we want. Now we feel happy, now we feel safe, and now we feel ready to attack. So then there's alignment. There's no more portraying strength or comfort or anything. There is no need to portray any message. Now he could be present and completely squared up to the action, saying, I'm here and I'm ready to take all your money. There's zero desire to portray anything or distract us. So that's why we see presence, focused. He's squared up, energy's going, but no necessary movement. And everything is saying, go ahead, what are you going to do about it? He's basically stopped portraying comfort and stopped trying to make us believe that he's strong. And now he flipped the message to saying, I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think I'm strong or not. What are you going to do about it? And we could feel that message being sent through him.
Yeah, which takes us being present in the moment to observe that. Because in the moment at the table, I didn't notice it. And so with Brian, what range of hands has this behavioral dynamic from the pre-flop to flop?
King 10 suited, pocket 8s, pocket 10s.
That's it. Not even ace king?
No, not even ace king, because Ace King, there would still be nervousness. Maybe aces. I think the bottom is aces where he would, but even aces we would see more nervousness.
Well, but even aces, we said it's not going to change from pre-flop to flop.
Yeah.
So
even if we don't know what he did pre-flop, how strong his hand is, aces we would still see nervousness because he would still be worried about
draws.
or us having a 10 or something like that. Here it was calmness. Even though his energy was flowing, the unconscious was saying, "This is good. We're happy." So he's able to be completely calm with it and enjoy it. So there's a sense of enjoyment. We see it in his mouth. If you watch him on the flop and a turn, the bets and the river, he's smirking. He's almost like denying a smirk in his face. So his face went pre-flop where it was just kind of drooping, his lips and mouth drooping to this energy of happiness underneath his actions, because his lips are going upwards and his whole face is excited.
Yeah. I like this, and you can go fuck yourself.
Yep, exactly. And that's the message he's sending. That's the unconscious sends the message whether he likes it or not. And it's exactly the message we see is, I like this, and I don't give a shit how you feel about it because I know I'm good. I feel really good about this. As opposed to pre-flop where he's trying to send a message of, I want you to think I'm strong. I want you to think I'm comfortable. And unconscious saying, but I'm not comfortable at all. I can't even settle down. This shit is annoying. Like, I don't know why we're doing this. Like, I'm not happy about this. I wish we didn't do this. So once we don't see the duality, or there is no fight, meaning the person isn't fighting himself, they're actually aligned and present, then it tells us direct message that this player has a monster hand. And unless we can match that, there's no need to ever be in the spot. So this is why we could even make what others would consider insane fold on the flop if we actually connected and present with him. Because that shift from pre-flop energy to the flop is unmistakable.
Yeah, so in a vacuum, this is easy fold on the turn. If we're playing B plus A game, it's just got to let it go on the flop.
Yeah, we got to trust ourselves because ultimately we're there to play our game. Like, our game is about deeper than poker, connection and trust. And our hand is only relevant in how it plays against the players or opponent's hand.
Yeah. And here we're playing on his terms, not our terms.
Yeah.